All right. I'd like to call to order the February 2nd, 2022 Gig Harbor Parks Commission meeting. I'll start with a roll call. Ben Coronado, Parks Commission Chair, and Louise Tiemann.
I can't hear you, Ben.
Oop. Microphone all hung up somewhere.
There you go. You're back.
All right. It's actually Stephanie. I'm changing my name here. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. It's Louise Tiemann.
Here.
And Anastasia Wright.
Here.
Will Appleton.
Here.
Georgina Armstrong.
Here.
Stephanie Lyle.
Here.
And our Gig Harbor Council Member Liaison, Council Member Brenda Likens.
Yeah.
And City Staff Parks Manager Matthew Keogh.
Present.
And Public Works Assistant Terry Garrison.
Here.
All right. So thanks for everybody for joining us today. I think last meeting I jumped right over the introductions of our newest commission members, and I apologize for that. I did want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves formally at our first regular scheduled meeting, because that was a special meeting. So Stephanie and Georgina, if you'd just like to take a moment and introduce yourselves to the commission, and what brought you here, and what your background might be, and yeah, take a moment and introduce yourselves.
Great. Well, I'm Stephanie Lyle, the director at the Harbor History Museum, but also longtime resident of Gig Harbor. I've lived here, went to school here and all that. So I'm very familiar with the area. I got involved with the Parks Commission because I really believe in what you do, and feel like it's a good strategy for us to try to work together as much as we can and promote open space and historical interpretation and all of the amazing things that we have to offer in this area.
Hi, I'm Georgina Armstrong. I was actually born in London, so I grew up with the London park system, which was quite beautiful, quite lovely. And then I moved to California when I was 19. Got married, raised 2 children in Saratoga, California. And I went to college at Mills College. I have a degree in English Lit. And my children were competitive swimmers, so I know a lot about the Parks and Recreation program from both a mother and a grandmother. My grandchildren went through the park system, playing all sorts of sports. So I value the park system very much. I owned and operated a private school for 37 years. Had 450 children and 63 parents. It was very rewarding, and I got very involved in gardening too, community gardens, and then retired and moved to Carmel, California, where I got very involved with protecting the natural resources and was the board chair of the Carmel Advisory Board. And so we worked on creating possible solutions, mostly concerning environmental issues. And I wrote a report on the impacts of climate change on Carmel by the Sea's natural resources and public safety. And one big reason David and I moved here is because of wildfires. So I'm very involved with climate change and the issues of climate change. And we arrived here in Washington 5 weeks before the pandemic hit, so I don't really know Washington without the pandemic. And my husband and I moved to Heron's Key last summer, and I'm really excited about working with the Parks Commission. Thank you.
Great. So happy to have you guys apply and join the Parks Commission. Thanks so much. And we also have Council Member Brenda Likens as our new council liaison. And Brenda, thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm glad that you chose to fill that role. Maybe take a moment and welcome yourself to the commission. And I know you and I and Matthew had a moment to talk the other day kind of about the role and what we see for that and how that might look going forward. But yeah, just take a minute, introduce yourself to the commission, and then we'll kind of get going from there.
Sounds good. Great to be here. I just want to thank all of you for giving your time, your talents, your dedication to the Parks Commission. Parks Commission and the work with the natural beauty and the Parks and Recreation in Gig Harbor, it's why we all live here. It's why we love it. So I'm thrilled to be the liaison, and I just want to thank you for all your time. So I am a new city council member, position 3, just elected this last November. This is my first time holding public office. I am a longtime user of the park system. I'm the mother of 2 kids who are now in their 20s. My background is I've worked in pediatrics. I'm a nurse practitioner. I got my bachelor's and master's at University of Washington. I grew up in the South Sound. I grew up in the Steilacoom area, lived in basically Western Washington, Puget Sound area most of my life. I love it here, been here about 8 years. I live in North Gig Harbor. And I just want to, bring, whatever information, just passing of communication back and forth, and looking at how we're going to do the role. And I can talk about that in, if you want me to do a report a little bit later, but it's just great to be here. Look forward. I've met many of you, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you that I haven't met.
So happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet.
And we're happy to have you give your report now in sake of your time, if you be considerate of that. And if you would like to.
Sure. Yeah, I plan on listening in. I watched the last couple of meetings and got to listen to you all and kind of see what the latest was. And thank you, Matthew, for sending me all of the reports and the draft pros plan. Amazing, the work and the talent that you all put into that. So really impressive product. And I look forward to being a part of, we've got a couple meetings upcoming. We've got the study session on the 17th. And if there's any information that you want to just personally call me about, points you want to make, anything, feel free, and I can bring that. But I know that you're going to be speaking at that meeting. Look forward to that with the rest of the council reviewing. And then it looks like we're scheduled to do our first resolution to adopt, whether that be all or parts of the plan, on the end of the month, February 28th, as I saw it in the draft. So I look forward to being a part of that. And then a couple upcoming meetings that might be of interest to you would be, there is a resolution on February 14th meeting where we're going to discuss amending our legislative agenda to include climate change and sustainability language in our legislative agenda. There were 5 of us that wanted to take that forward. So we're looking forward to that, as well as the other climate change initiatives, kind of moving forward and working that into our long-term goals. So that might be something for you all to keep apprised of. And then also the Gig Harbor Land Conservation Fund that I know, Ben, I saw that you have shared, is going to be doing a presentation at City Council on March 14th. So tentatively, so might be a good meetings to tune in. And then, as Ben and Matt said, we've been talking about the role and how I can be of best service to help you all and just maintaining communication. And just so you know, Matt, did you share the kind of summary of the role with the rest of the commission?
I don't believe that went to the entire commission.
Okay, great. So just some of the highlights, because I thought it was so well done and just kind of succinct about what we talked about, was that the liaison, I'm going to share council interest with you and potential requests, typically to Ben, the commission chair. I'm going to notify the commission of what I think might be of interest to you of what we're going to be doing in the council. I'm going to attend the commission meetings just upon request, or if there's a special interest. Today I'll stay, and listen as I can, or as the agenda, but free communication between you. I only speak, I'm 14.9% of the council vote. So I don't speak, for the whole commission, but I want there to be a free exchange of ideas, free exchange of information. And so feel free to contact me personally by my cell phone or my email that was in the list. I know that Matthew created with everybody's contact information. And then, if there's any questions that you have about anything that council's working on, I certainly can speak to just the process and where we're at. So I think it'll be a really good collaborative relationship, and I look forward to, working with you all. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great, thanks so much, Brenda. Yeah, I agree. Like an open idea of communication, an open door of communication is key, and I appreciate that and your willingness to be a part of that. Yeah, so her contact information was provided by Matthew today. So she said feel free to give her a call or an email, and she's ready to listen if need be. So yeah, she's happy to have the role and be in that role. So we're happy to have her. Is there anything, Matthew, you wanted to add, or?
It's a great introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Moving along on the agenda, the approval of minutes from the January 5th, 2021 meeting. Before we approve that one, do you know if we had the study session meeting minutes? Were those moved forward? Did we have those? Am I mistaken?
There aren't formal minutes taken.
Okay. Okay.
So
So no need to approve those then? Okay. So is there a motion to approve the January 5th, 2021 minutes?
So moved.
Sure.
Second.
And seconded, perfect by Will. And any discussion on that, or we can just move to all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. The January 5th meeting minutes are approved as written. Moving on to old business, pros plan recommendation to City Council. So as you all know, this was a very big one, and we've been working on this for quite some time. I think we're to the point now where we're looking forward to a recommendation, hopefully this evening, either with some included amendments or as written, to move along to the work study session with council that we have scheduled later this month. But yeah, as most of you know, this was a very big lift, and lots of work went into this, and lots of opinions and community voices all are included in this. And so we're looking forward to, like I said, a recommendation from the Parks Commission, hopefully this evening. Let's see, what am I missing? Yeah, so Matthew. Oh, yeah.
At this point, do you want to put a motion on the table and then we'll discuss? So
Start on that.
So I would so move that we move to approve the pros plan. Or
Just
recommend
second that.
approval.
There's a
I'll
second.
second that.
Okay. So yeah, we can move right along to any amendments or any deliberations.
I have a general
Oh,
question.
I apologize. Let me see if there's anybody from the public that wanted to comment on this.
I have a couple of public comments that were submitted.
Okay.
You want, I can read those now?
Sure.
Okay, the first one was submitted by an anonymous source. They had 4 points that they wanted to submit. The first one says, I believe that if public lands or publicly owned open spaces are not accessible to the citizens, then the public often reflects them or becomes hostile towards the idea of public lands not open to use. A, make sure there's a goal stated purpose for every city-owned parcel if there is a public access intended. Number 2, create a goal and plan for each city-owned parcel adjacent to the Cushman Trail to have some sort of passive access and interpretive signs. Number 3, verify that each public park or open spaces intended for passive use have available public parking. 4, right-of-way property should be identified for public transportation and utility purposes. However, existing public street ends that allow public access to the shoreline, view, or beach access should be identified for potential protection and development as a recreational use. So that was the first comment. The second one submitted by email came from Jennifer Preston Shushkoff. No street address was given. She submitted a proposal for a greenhouse space at Penman's Peninsula garden site, but she referenced this as being public comment for our pros plan. So I wanted to acknowledge that we received it. And let's see, We have 2 attendees. Lexi, did you want to give some public comment? If so, would you please give your name and your street address?
No public comment, thank you. I'm listening in from the Peninsula Gateway.
Okay, thank you. And we also have Marlene Drucker.
Thank you, Terry. I'm actually not, I have a general public comment, and I see on the agenda that's at the end of the meeting. So I will raise my hand if I want to participate before then, but other than that, you can just hold me off till there. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment for the pros plan recommendation at this time. And just to reiterate, so we had the motion proposed by Will for adoption of the proposed plan, seconded by Georgina. So on that note, yeah, kick it off and see if there's any further recommendations. Stephanie, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question because I mean, I'm new to the commission and I don't know necessarily how the whole process works, but I notice on the version of the pros plan that I have, which I think is the most latest version, it still says draft on it. And I wanted to know if there is still time to give input, or is that moment over?
No, there's absolutely still time, I believe. So yeah, tonight is a great opportunity to provide input, and then also at the city council meeting, which is February, was it 28th? Am I mistaken on that date?
Okay. Yeah.
That is the
I've
correct
just-
date then.
Yeah, it's just a minor, a little bit of minor text edits on some of the descriptions of the parks, which probably are easier for me to just send to Matthew directly. It's not major stuff, but if there's going to be a little history of something and it needs a tweak, then I think we should take the time to do it. So, yeah. But,
Sure.
okay, cool. I will put it on my work list because God knows it's gotten longer. So.
All right.
So we're good. Yeah. I just wanted to know if we were voting on the plan as it sits or plan with potential edits coming down the road. So.
Yeah, right now we're up for any discussion that you might have, or I mean, if you wanted to relay any of those comments that you have and provide an amendment, feel free.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know that we spent a fair amount of time on the sections that were about the specific parks. And that does go into some keeping with just knowing where those parks are and what the flavor of the park is. Because I think I interpreted some properties or misinterpreted properties based on what I thought they were, not knowing what they really were. So, and that's, undeveloped properties that were listed that were on the plan. So I do think the comment about having some intention about, acquired land, but not accessible, having a plan for that to happen, at least some sort of vision for the future is a good idea. I would definitely support that. So anyway, I'm not going to go through like minutia details at this moment, but I think that the plan overall is fantastic, and is really a great testament to all the work that Steve and Matthew and Jeff all did, and the commission, obviously. So anyway, carry on.
I have a process question and a comment. My process question is, are we recommending that the pros plan just as a whole move forward and that's the extent of the recommendation, or is the recommendation supposed to say something else? I mean, really, what are we recommending? What's the language of the recommendation? Kind of thing.
So the language on the recommendation is either we can recommend it as written, or, if there's any amendments to be included, we would recommend it with included amendments to it. So this would be like the opportunity, if there's anything lasting that you feel wasn't addressed or that you feel should still be addressed, then we can propose an amendment to our recommendation to provide to council.
that's fine. And then my one comment is that in the very introduction that includes the history of Gig Harbor, that it was discovered in whatever year, 18, whatever, I think we missed an opportunity there to reference the tribe and our tribal history, that Gig Harbor appears to be pristinely entering into existence, at that time. And we've worked so hard this whole year to talk about it as the layer cake, and that the tribal history was here from time immemorial, and we missed a shot there. And I think a small edit there would be appropriate and beneficial.
Sure. Do you want to propose an amendment to the draft, and then we can kind of open discussion further on that? And it could be, just too very vague, and just keep it open, and then we'll.
I propose an amendment that would reference the tribe, the Puyallup tribe, as part of the history of Gig Harbor.
And Matthew, where do you see? Will, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to kind of ask a process question as well. I mean, the way I view it, would it be safe to assume that what we're doing is we're recommending the current plan with no substantive changes, and then minor edits and things that we want to tweak administratively, such as, providing this recognition up in the front, which really doesn't change the pros plan, right? Would it be safe to assume that that's kind of the motion on the table, and that those small administrative tweaks don't need to be necessarily, we can ask for them. It obviously would be cleaned up, typos would be taken care of, that sort of thing. Is that, or does it need to be more than that? I guess I would direct that to either you, Ben, or Matthew.
Matt, you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. I appreciate the question, Will. And I'm more in tune with your first suggestion, that you have discussion generally on recommending right now. And if people are bringing up items like Scrivener errors and even a description that got missed, in this one case, an important one on page 5, I think we can acknowledge, unless there's objection, that these things will go forward. So I would just ask the chair to say, does anyone object? I don't think we need to go through the process of friendly amendments to the motion, because the motion was generic. And on that point, you have gotten from me my errors identified, and they were put into an annotated agenda for you to see. So there are some errors I'm hoping you endorse tonight. And I guess Ben could always ask if there's objections or need to talk about A through E if you have that in front of you, or I'll introduce those separately. But that's a long answer to your question. I think it's a general motion on the floor. And until someone says they need to talk about it, I would suggest that it's in line with recommending it forward.
Okay, can I make an amendment to the motion that the A through, is it E or F? F on the annotated agenda be incorporated as the recommendation? Unless.
Thanks, Ben, for making a friendly amendment. You'll need a second for it. And I will only point out that I should have clarified it's A through D. E and F are just sitting there as needed, as catch-alls.
Gotcha.
For any substantive changes that need to occur. So it's really A through D right now, unless Luis or others felt like their point needs to be spelled out specifically.
I do not.
Thank you. So Ben put a friendly amendment to the motion, and I think, Ben, you need a second on that.
I'll second that.
Okay. So the amendment is to include A through D to the motion of recommending the pros plan and incorporating A through D. And there is a second from Luis. And
Ben, let me interrupt you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think for the public record, I should read those out loud because the public doesn't have A through D.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that if you'd like me to. And then it sounds like you're about to take a vote on the amended version of the motion, not the motion itself.
Right.
Okay. So with this amendment already identified for amendments to the current proposed draft that came before the Parks Commission on February 2nd. One, amend the capital improvement program, which is shown on page 90, to show master planning for the Old Burnham Properties Initiative to be suggested for the year 2025 and not 2023. Second, or letter B, insert reference into the prose plan of the adopted transportation element of the comprehensive plan, which integrates non-motorized active transportation planning for goal and policy coordination. C, amend the non-capital project listing, which is currently page 90, to remove the item non-motorized and active transportation plan. And D, amend the non-capital project listing, also page 90, to include anticipated park focus phase of the city's 2021 ADA transition plan, designating $40,000 in 2023 for this initiative, and ADA referencing the American Disabilities Act.
Matthew, I had a question on the D. The 40,000 that number comes from, was that the recommended from the consultant yearly?
No, actually, that just came out of my own practice with transition plans. The fact that the city did adopt one in 2021, but did not estimate prices for the future phases. It just acknowledges, as adopted by council in December of last year, that there will be future phases. And the reason staff suggests that you put this on the listing is because it's important as soon as 2022 or 23 to begin really prioritizing which areas deserve ADA attention, because your capital improvement program as proposed shows that we're going to get serious in 23 and 24, 25. There's a set aside funding for ADA improvements. So we need to get this focus, this aspect of the existing ADA transition plan accomplished relatively soon, and that funding amount was from my experience.
And then one more question, sorry. On C, can you expound a little bit on, was it C? Oh, I apologize, B, item B, as far as inserting reference?
Yeah, happy to. The reason that this came to be was that our previous draft and the one you got for public review to tonight suggested that we set aside funding for the idea of doing a non-motorized transportation plan. Well, silly on me, this new staff member didn't realize we have an active transportation plan. It just happens to be within the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. And so what I wanted to call out here was that our document, or the prose plan, should make reference to the fact that the comprehensive plan transportation element is particularly relevant for non-motorized transportation planning. It belongs probably in our trail section. I didn't specify the page. I kind of wanted to give it to the consultant to insert this as a reference where needed, that there is a bicycle, there is a trail, there's a sidewalk, there's a number of improvement plans even for non-motorized transportation. I may have mentioned to some of you that there's about 4 pages worth of projects the city has adopted for non-motorized transportation improvements. I just didn't want the prose plan not to reference that, because people think, and I think, that that these kinds of projects on trails particularly would be referenced in our prose plan. It's just a matter of really saying they're covered in the comprehensive plan and we are coordinating with it.
Great. Like point there. Yeah. Thank you.
Matthew, I think the phrase coordinating with those plans is a good one, you know, as you pass that on to the consultant.
Thank you. Yeah, right now, Luis, it just ends, that letter B ends with for goal and policy coordination. Did you feel that that's sufficient?
I do. I don't have it in front of me, and I tried to open it on my Kindle and it said denied. So thank you.
Thank you for your patience. Are there any other questions about that? Otherwise, I think Ben's entertaining a friendly amendment to the motion, and it's been seconded.
For discussion, otherwise we'll take a vote on the amendment to the motion. All in favor of approving the letters A through D to be incorporated into the original motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the amendment so passed. Back to the original motion.
You're muted, Ben.
Sorry. Any further discussion on the original motion with the incorporated letters A through D from Matthew's descriptions? Nope. If not, go ahead and vote on the original motion with the incorporated amendment to recommend the pros plan with the friendly edits, the Scribners, the reference to the tribe as well. Let's see. So we got the A through D tribe, and then the minor edits. I think I added to that original motion, didn't I? Sorry.
But aren't we missing a verb? We're recommending that the council adopts the pros plan, or what are we
We're recommending the pros plan to council for adoption through resolution, through their yeah.
because we're not writing a resolution to
Right.
adopt. We're writing a recommendation that council adopt
Correct.
the resolution, the pros plan.
So yes, so we're recommending for adoption through resolution that the pros plan be adopted by council with the amendments A through D. Yep. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. All right. So to cap on that, we will get a revision here. Hopefully, will we have a revision for be prior to the work study session? I assume then later this month.
Yes.
Is that when we should kind of expect it the week prior to that?
We will, and I will say that Scribner errors are always amendable and fixable. So that, and even some of the Appendix A that Stephanie was relying on, or I wouldn't say there's a strict deadline. We just need to have it done before council adoption, or we hope adoption on the 28th.
And then just for further matter on the process. So this isn't actually going to be incorporated into the comprehensive plan until the comprehensive plan is updated. Is that correct? Or is there going to be an amendment to the comprehensive plan to include this?
Thanks for asking it. It's really the latter, Ben. Every year we have an opportunity to amend the comprehensive plan, and a docket is put together on behalf of the city, and it says these are the elements of the comprehensive plan that are getting amendments. The parks element of the comprehensive plan will get amended as part of that docket process and a public hearing process. And with it, they will adopt the pros plan, goals, and policies. And if other things come up by way of planning commission and public hearing for policy consideration, I'll be sure to share that with you. But it becomes up to the city council that there are some additional areas that they want to adopt policy for. They can always do that with the parks when it comes to the comprehensive plan. It's a legislative ordinance-based document, so it's their protocol and license to do so. If the pros plan became inconsistent with a change, like say somebody said, really, I think we should build a roller coaster park, and we're going to make that the highest priority, and we're going to put that in the capital program. I would say that's not consistent with our goals and policies, and we'd have to address how we're going to handle that in the future. That's really a ridiculous example. But my point being is that we assume that they're not going to do anything inconsistent with the pros plan. And if so, then we bring that to council's attention, and then council also has to help us address our pros plan getting amended. But, Luis asked earlier, what are we doing? And I'm glad you clarified on the motion, and it's done now, but that you were bringing a recommendation to council for their adoption by resolution. I was impressed to find out that Ben has, as a tradition here of writing a memo to council, it'll be from him speaking to this motion and stating that this was the motion on this record. And Luis asked a kind of a technical question, but it's not too late to still address this. You can forward to council through your chairperson any findings of fact or any concerns that you might want to bring to them. And the way I would argue this is that findings can be a minority report. That sounds controversial. It's not. It's just saying if you disagreed with the motion, you're welcome to give your input in the bullet format kind of thing. Like here's why I was concerned. So findings can accompany Ben's recommendation to the council. He reflects your action as a body and he'll write that motion as recorded. But if there were findings that were important to him or to any of you, you can forward those with the recommendation. They don't need a vote of the commission. If the commission is going to take action, it has to do it through motion. Does that make sense? And you did it action through motion.
I'll take one more question from you there, Matthew. As far as the comprehensive plan amendment goes, will that will the pros plan then go through the planning commission as well then? As part of the adoption into the comprehensive plan?
The important part of the pros plan, it's all important, but the very important part are the goals and policies. So the goals and policies will go letter by letter in front of the Parks Commission, or sorry, the Planning Commission, and then ultimately City Council. And they will have a public process about those policies and goals and can they be legislatively adopted at the city level. And when they do that, then they have the opportunity, and they're not a requirement, but an opportunity to either reference our capital improvement program or to convert it. Now I'm talking fancy words, so forgive me. It's really just planner lingo. They can convert the program, which is in your pros plan, to a capital improvement plan. There's no requirement for a parks capital improvement plan. They do not have to adopt your capital improvement program recommendations. We have that. We're going to use it. The public has seen where you vetted things and what you think is important over the next few years, and it gives a lot of guidance. Council could say, we want to go ahead and make that a plan and that we're tied to those recommendations in theory for 6 years. They can always amend a capital improvement plan. They can't amend your pros program, if you follow what I'm saying. You've got the 6-year vision. They have the responsibility, and the comprehensive plan has the responsibility of adopting a true dedication to these funds for the year ahead. The plan is a little bit different than the program. And sometimes what you'll find is they will, they'll say, definitely love your 6-year plan and it's great guidance. Sometimes they'll say, we really want to do this annually and revisit this every year. It's really a council call on that one.
So would that would be another opportunity for the public to provide input on the plan itself and as far as the goals and policies and the capital improvement?
When it goes in front of the Planning Commission and City Council as a docket for public and for the comprehensive plan update, yes, amendment, not update. It's an amendment process this year. Yes, public comment can come in, and yes, people can comment about whether or not there should be a capital improvement plan. And they can make comment on whether or not the plan should look any different than the program that is recommended in the pros document. They could make those suggestions.
Okay, great.
And
Thank you for that
council always
clarification.
has the choice to say, we want to prioritize the projects differently and put them in different years. You've given them guidance on how you think the 6 years ahead should look.
Thank you so much. I was like, I think, yeah. So
We were talking to a land use planner. It can be really nerdy.
Chair, I do have a quick question on this.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, then, Matt, is the plan something that Gig Harbor tends to, I guess, re-examine on an annual basis?
It has
I know,
not
like,
been.
it has not been. So the plan usually has kind of just been left in place and followed to the degree that it can, funded to the degree that it can. I see. Okay.
Yeah, and just as a comparison note, Will, you might be familiar that the city has a 6-year transportation improvement plan. And that is something that the city is accustomed to adopting every year and being very deliberate about whether or not the next 6 years are right programmed for the right amount of money. And in some ways, it's not just a strategic choice, that's a requirement that your transportation projects be documented for 6 years.
Yep, no, it's exactly what I was drawing a parallel with. Okay, thank you.
But also they can step away from the program if there's an opportunity, say, to acquire a piece of a parcel and things like that. I mean, there are elements of any given year that can go out the window in the face of either an opportunity or a disaster. You know, something falls down or whatever, and has to be, money is now going in some other direction. I mean, there's only so much money in the system.
So we had our motion pass. So do we want to, some of the findings as far as like reference, do we want to reference the tribe as a finding then? As far as expounding on what we had written? Or is that too late and should have been included as part of the motion? You said it could be written after the fact, correct?
Yeah, the findings can come before you finalize the memo to council, and which will need to happen within a week.
Okay.
So I would say you can typically take findings for a week up to the end of the meeting.
Okay.
It's nice to know tonight if anyone intends to do a finding so that it's not a surprise and they read about it later. But sometimes it comes to you in the middle of the night.
So is a finding a recommended edit?
No.
What is a finding?
A finding would be typically a finding of some substantive fact or concern that you have as an individual. And sometimes, because we don't all agree, it's important for a person to get their point of view across that they think this is an important finding, and then it gets read by the city council before they adopt the change. They could agree with the minority of the Parks Commission that something else was really important and needed to be included. So you might be a minority tonight by yourself, but by writing down your findings, you might grow a majority among the decision makers.
Okay.
So like I would view a finding as something like if I as a commissioner believed passionately that there should be recreation programs for youth as part of the Parks Department, and that obviously isn't in the proposed plan, that to me would qualify as a finding.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting a small edit to include the tribe feels like not a finding.
Yeah, because on that same page, you know, obviously we want to recognize the tribe, and you know, there's some language edits that make it sound like Jerusich, Goldsmith, and Farragut were on the Wilkes expedition. So I am going to suggest some edits for that specifically, because not true. Completely different time period. So anyway, but that's easy enough to address.
Any other questions or discussions before moving on to the next agenda item?
I do have a question just about the expense, because the pros plan is for 6 years, right? Is there a like an accommodation within the pros plan for the future addition of parkland and whatnot? Because there's parkland that's identified that's not on the list, and because I know it's not a done deal yet. But is there a particular section where that is addressed, or is that just in the section that is kind of like the recommendations for the future?
Yeah, Stephanie, thanks for asking that. Do you want me to take a stab at that, Ben? Yeah. You might recall, and it may be that it happened a little bit before you joined, but the commission asked for a land acquisition strategy, and that it be described, if not detailed specifically at this time, and that there be some criteria and considerations for land acquisitions. So that occurred in kind of your generic way to answer your question. It didn't say it should be this property over that property, and here's a list of 30 of them potentially we might acquire or we're interested in. And it didn't say we value this over that. It said, here are some important criteria considerations. I'd love to reference the page number. I don't have it on my head.
Okay, I'm scrolling through. If I find it, I'll let you know.
Yeah, but Stephanie, let me tell you though, that you find the right balance here of setting yourself up with policies that allow you to proceed towards some grant programs, some acquisitions, some stormwater management kinds of things. And so we have policies that are very broad on purpose so that we can have an active program, which maybe will over time better define, but an active program for acquisition. This gave us some broad stroke considerations for acquisition strategies. It does say you should have one, and there's no end to making it better and more specific. And that's something you can even put on your work program. But last thing I wanted to say is you will recall, I hope, capital project program, the capital improvement program, the spreadsheet at the back of the document. It does have placeholders for acquisition of parkland. And that word parkland, I didn't think enough about it until just now. That's a general term, and that could be for conservation purposes, and that could be for really very active recreation. The CIP program is not meant to really tie us down so specifically that it has to be only recreation neighborhood park. The plan seems to suggest you need recreational access at this, you need about 9-10 acres worth of it. So we put placeholders that we need to acquire parkland. And I would say that that shows on your capital improvement program that you are intending there to be capital funds set aside for such. So long way to answer it is there's a general approach, there's a policy approach, and then in the CIP listing, there's the acquisition of properties, both for local recreation and for conservation. North Creek Conservation Phase 1, North Creek Conservation Opportunity Phase 2 are listed. And I think you know, and there's no secret to that, but I think you know what those properties are and where they are. Those are a public record that the city has made application for Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the North Creek Conservation Area.
You know when that might go through? What the status is?
I do, and that might go a little bit beyond prose because I know that there was a question already asked of me in general. I will say that the North Creek Conservation 1 and 2 have been applied to the Conservation Futures Program, and that they have been endorsed by the county for funding, where they pay up to 90% of the cost of those two acquisitions, but they have not yet awarded the funds because there's an appraisal process and there's a couple other technicalities we go through in order to finalize that. So those two are in motion. The two that are shown on your capital improvement program, again, under conservation strategies, shows that we have a conservation commitment there of over $5 million.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie, check out page 66, I think is kind of where the,
Thanks,
Okay,
Ben.
I'm almost there, yeah.
we're wrapping up the pros plan discussion. Does
Yeah.
anybody else have any lingering questions or anything else they wanted to address? Okay. I think we're gonna move on to new business item number 1. So now that, new business item number 1 is 2022 Parks Commission work plan goal session. So the idea behind the work plan and the goal session is that, we can take now what we have in front of us, the pros plan, and hopefully it'll be adopted by council into the comprehensive plan, but there's some goals outlined there and values that the community have, and we can kind of take that and really formulate our work plan for the coming, not just the year, but we can craft it into a multi-year work plan in that our terms are 3-year lengths, and there's no reason that a calendar year should be the end of our work plan, in that some of these are rolling action items, and so it takes longer than 6 to 9 months. And so I think the idea there is that we can start crafting the goals behind the driving force of our work plan, for the next 1 to 3 years, if need be. So Matthew had an exercise he wanted us to participate in to help us kind of get the creative juices going on what we value and what our park system and what we want to work on as a commission. So I'm going to hand it off to Matt, and we can kind of expound on it a little further, but.
Well, thanks, Ben. I will take the floor in just a sec with a little housekeeping and obviously with deference to the commission if you'd rather direct me otherwise and talk about different direction. But the agenda, Ben, did have a second old business item. And I think we're perfectly good moving right into new business. If you would just acknowledge that we're also talking about old business because it was listed the 2022 Park Commission Work Plan Review. And what that old business item was to call up your draft. Your commission has drafted a 2022 work program draft, and we don't want to forget that or assume that there's a problem with it, because it could be adopted and recommended as is. And so you had old business, but since we've already introduced the new business, if you could just acknowledge that we're doing two things at once. We're looking at the draft and we're looking at potential amendments to it.
Acknowledged.
Great. Well, your work program is a document I bet several of you are familiar with and have used over the years, and hopefully been able to refer to the community. Like, our commission cares about these things, and this is what we're charged to do, or what we've charged ourselves to do. One of the really important aspects of your work program is that it is reviewed by council, and it becomes a collaborative work program because they have the opportunity to also commission you to do some things in the year ahead, and to give you the authorization to study these things, or to have the meetings, or some of the initiatives that you might like to take. They can endorse you and give it more credit, and you can then have a agreed upon work program. So I want you to realize this is your vehicle first, but it has its importance and it has more credibility and so forth, and true authorization after council has reviewed and accepted it. So there's a little bit of typical negotiation on a work plan with council, although they usually really appreciate all of your initiatives and goals. They might say, this goal is more important to us. Would you consider including it? Or would you even, I will push back if they ask us to do things in a certain month. But I would say, like, they could say, we're aware of something happening later in the year, and so we'd really like to see you think about this in this order. Your work plan can be generic, and it can just be a list. It can also have a few milestones to check how we're doing on the pros plan, for example. You could have a check-in on the comprehensive plan after the docket experience. You don't have to anticipate all those things. As your staff member, I'll do my best to bring you things timely. But your work program definitely has the opportunity of introducing a schedule element and a review element of goals. Now, you've always had commission goals, but one of the big initiatives at hand, and this is where an exercise would probably be needed, is whether or not you would like to establish your own work plan goals. Previously, you had work plan items, not goals, from what I can see. You also had in the 22 version, draft, I could bring it up, a kind of a continuation of a listing largely projects, park projects, and calling those the work program of the commission. I think some of you may have even gotten frustrated over the years because you're not able to control those projects. You're not able to set a goal for the project to get done, or if you do, it may run into the reality that there isn't staff. I bet a lot of you experience that. There isn't funding. That happens during recessions and so forth. And then there's just different conditions that are beyond your control. So I would suggest that it needs to be broader than what I've seen. A list of capital projects really doesn't give you a way to evaluate your progress. It doesn't give you a chance to reflect back on what you as a commission care about the most, unless somehow the capital projects perfectly align with your commission goals. So I think what I'm getting at is I see a lack of goals in the current draft. If you'd like me to open it up on my screen, we could do a share screen. You should have it. And what I would suggest is that instead of spending a lot of time tonight crafting a work program, is to contemplate these issues, this conversation, and be able to really focus on it in your next meeting. The exercise that I was thinking to do with you was to call up the park duties. Powers and duties are assigned to the Parks Commission by our municipal code. I think you all have that link, and this isn't unfamiliar to you. And in the exercise either that we do together tonight, or you could do on your own, I wanted to suggest that the 5 main duties of the Parks Commission, and I'm calling it up on my own screen, but it's actually, maybe it's 6, A through F, 6. Those duties could each be reflected upon by commissioners and potentially set a goal for each one. You don't have to, but it's a way to really go back to what are you empowered to do, and are you have a way to measure your success and help inform the work program. So there is on here the example I keep bringing up. you have the duty to cooperate with any and all departments of the city and public school authorities, Pierce County and the state of Washington, and the Peninsula Metropolitan Park District. You have the opportunity and the duty to cooperate with them in the furtherance of a well-rounded parks recreation program. So just that alone, if that falls to you, you could set a goal to say, we will invite Penmet to a joint meeting. We will work with the school district and learn more about their field reservation programs. It's advised to do this with staff because there's some things that we're already doing, of course, but I think it's important to the commission to own its own goals. So if we did this exercise together, I would say, let's look through A through F of the municipal code under 2.50050. And let's see if we can talk about each one, maybe translate them into a value. Like on that cooperation one, the value is probably efficiency, or the value to you might be concurrent use of funds. Like that's a crazy word, but my point being is you translate to us, as a commission, what value you want to pursue behind that duty. And when you do a value identification, even if it's a single word, we could then attach it to a potential outcome. We will have meetings with those jurisdictions. We will have outreach to them, whatever it might be. That outcome would really help me and help us craft your goal statement. Because I would be able to, a goal statement should ultimately be measurable and have some kind of ability to deliver and know if we met it. So if you tell me accountability is the value, the outcome is the staff will be up to date on the comprehensive plan and will track docket changes, blah, blah, blah. That's really specific. But if you did that, then I would be able to translate to a goal of the Parks Commission will be briefed on comprehensive plan amendments by park staff. Maybe not the most exciting answer, but I think if you did it individually or as a group and you identified values with each of them, you might be able to translate those to outcomes and goals that you really care about. And I'm glad Ben brought up that it can be a 3-year goal. It can be longer than your own term. But it goes with your work program to be adopted, at least reviewed by council every year. So your goals would get looked at every year.
So where did things fit in, like something we talked about a lot during the pandemic, but couldn't execute on because of staff and COVID constraints. We really wanted to expand, park volunteer programs and things like that. So, and that I think is a multi-year task to really get it up and running. So does that kind of thing count? As a goal. We put a lot of work into it already, of gathering samples of release forms and all of that, identifying some projects that park volunteers could do. So, like, where does something like that fit in?
Luis, that's very practical and real to your work and your passion that you've put in. That's paramount that we write it down. And that we direct ourselves to try to accomplish it when you adopt as a group your work program, right? You'll have a chance as a commission to say that's realistic and that's not, with staff input. But your point that you just raised was a great example, and it's not something that would come directly out of this exercise of looking through A through E or A through F, whatever. That would come from just your knowledge as a commissioner, right? And willing to put it forward. I just wanted to be sure that the broadest net was taken when you look at what you could be pursuing based on your duties. Ben already told you there might be goals that you really want to focus on from the pros plan, and which ideally will be adopted by your next meeting. That would be very appropriate and probably not directly tied to going through A through F of your duties. I think you're sort of pointing out to me that the A through F would be a good starting point if you had all the time in the world, but it may not be necessary because you're already engaged in your community and aware of your duties.
So yeah, I think the one specifically, I mean, I think that what Luis was touching on was the Adopt a Parks program that we, went on recommended to council and was adopted by council, but never put into place because lack of staff hours, or lack of staffing issues, is what we were told, until someone could manage that program. So yeah, I guess what's a reasonable goal, or I mean, that's a work item, obviously, but what would be a reasonable work item thing to have an expectation for completion that we could derive from a goal, if that's not one of them?
Ben, I think you're on to asking a practical question of where is it? Where do you place it? It is a relevant goal. And I think it's just becomes whether, at one point it's a goal and another point it's a work plan item or item to review status of regularly, if you want to stick a language into that effect. But I think it's really important for you to have reflected on, we want to have Adopt a Park program. And you could, with me, set a goal of having one in place by 2023, mid-year, or for the summer of. These are goals, and it's nice that they're measurable. And I think they belong in your work program. You can't, I guess what I'm going to point out is I want to embrace them. I just know that, and that we're not able to really direct city resources by your work program. So it's just that fine line where staff will say, got it, we'll let you know how we're doing towards your goal. It's not necessarily a staff operational goal to do so, but I will let you know that. Like, I'm just not gonna be able to get that done.
No, yeah, that was pretty clear last time when they're like, you're not allowed any engineering hours.
So
I will say the draft.
Part of what the discussion was at the time, even a full year ago, was that we, the commission, wanted to do the lion's share of the work on of administering Adopt a Park. And of course, there's staff things that are required. There's things like those releases and legal opinions on whatever. But that was part of the goal, was that was something that we could take on and run it. And was that possible? Right. That's one of the questions at the time was can this be part of the work of the commission?
Well, Luis, not to spend too much more time on this, I would say you just identified probably the first, well-acknowledged goal that needs to be in this work plan. And if you have a work plan that you feel, or a goal that's too ambitious, I'm not going to call it too ambitious. That's the commission's goal. And you will sometimes have to have, and I have those embarrassing moments, but it's okay. The staff did not meet your goal. It's not like you're writing my goals. You deserve to have goals that state you want to try to have a park adoption program. And we can translate over the next meeting or so to a date and time, because we'll get some drafts together for everybody to read, right? But that's what I think this session's leading to is it's time to come to the commission, ideally with at least one goal each of you, but potentially one goal for each year that you're going to be on this commission. And you can look over the duties and you can just bring it forward for commission deliberation. They're not going to be able to adopt them all because it won't be that practical, but where there's consensus and there's a sense of that's a really good one, I think we're going to feel like you're writing your goals together. So I think you just helped really identify one. And like I said, I just wanted to clarify, it's okay that it may not be sounding like it's directing staff, because it won't. Not because I'm rude, but because your goals are not staff goals.
I guess the question for me then is, are the goals that how much of the work of achieving the goals is taken on by the commission versus the staff? Because I don't think anyone's trying to make more work for you.
Yeah,
We're just trying to figure out what we can do and what the role of the commissioner really is.
Great question, Stephanie. It's always it is, that was a good example too on Adopt a Park. It can be to be determined and just the outcome you really want to pursue. And it's okay to acknowledge that without knowing exactly who's going to do it. I don't want you to be caught up in exactly how do you get it done. I would like to be having candid conversations with you, like I'm concerned about that. And I think you need to have a study. And I think you need to, not because I like consultants, but I think we need to be careful before we say we're going to do it. But your goal can still say, I don't care. I think we need to do it. And I'm not going to do it, but I think the city should. That's a commission charge. It's not like you have to be responsible to the point of, I have to deliver this because I helped write that goal. You wrote a goal on behalf of a commission that is thinking about the city's park system. And that's an important job in itself. It's not necessarily delivering it. That's something we try to meet, but not necessarily through volunteers.
I really like that as a little take-home homework then, Matthew. I mean, if everybody can bring a goal to our next meeting, a goal for every year of your time on the commission. I really like that idea, and then we can kind of start crafting, a longer-term goal and midterm goals, and kind of as a commission come up with a work plan. I think in our next meeting, hopefully, or the meeting thereafter. It doesn't necessarily have to be for the calendar year, and it can be long-term and it can be short-term. So. I think if everybody has an opportunity to look through those, that municipal code that he referenced, it's, it powers and duties under the Gig Harbor Municipal Code for the Parks Commission, and to really get an idea of where our limitations are and where we have a real strong voice, as far as, whether that be conservation or trails or, and then we can start moving forward, connecting to the right people to help achieve those goals, whether that be, Leafline Trails Coalition or conservation organizations or anything like that. So I think that's a great idea, Matthew. Thank you. So if everybody wants to take an opportunity to bring back 1 to 3 goals for our next meeting, or submit them to Matthew between now and the next meeting, and he can come with a compiled list and provide that or something to that effect. What do you think works best there? Send them to you, Matthew or Terry, or?
That's a great question. I really don't want anybody to deliberate ahead of the rest of the commission. So I think I would prefer that people bring them live and deliver, not a passion speech, but deliver them personally to the group.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, and I just procedurally, you haven't decided this, but if you're adopting goals, if you go that path and you agree to some, I would then say that your work plan items that you have in your current draft, that they get associated with the goals, so that they become things. And work plan items, we could always add some more things over time. But what you have right now are work plan items not attached to measurable goals. So I hope I made that case to you of why I think it's important. And your work plan items, they currently don't show in that draft adopt a park. So it really is important that we get those important projects and goals into your work program. Like if we had adopted 2022, maybe you guys were told to take it off, but it wasn't here. It did say Park Appreciation Day, pandemic aware, and that's something for later in the meeting that we can talk about. It's an upcoming event.
So the Adopt a Parks was actually part of our 2021 work plan that was completed.
Okay.
Consider that completed because council adopted it.
They adopted your work program, but you didn't complete the project?
No, they adopted the Adopt a Parks program.
Oh, okay.
That we recommended and they adopted the program itself, but because of lack of staff hours or whatever it was never put in place.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize they had adopted it.
So that's why I was like, there's limitations to what we can do, obviously. I mean,
Right.
Whether it be staffing or, what have you. So yeah.
I think if the goal in this, using this as a sample, but thinking more broadly, if the goal is to increase community involvement in parks, and the work plan item is to adopt, is to get Adopt a Park up and running and to do Parks Appreciation Day as 2 work plan tasks that support the goal of increasing community involvement. I think that's kind of where you're trying to go with that, right? Okay. Can do.
Okay. So we got a little homework on this one.
Yeah, I just needed, sorry, Ben.
Yeah, Georgina, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Okay. So would it be helpful if we had more information on what the public works work plans are themselves. I mean, are we trying to fit something into their list or match their list or expand upon their list in some way, or if we think something's not thorough enough, or I'm not quite sure where there's a lot of work obviously that the Public Works Department engages in already. So what is the difference between what we're trying to do here today and what they already have planned on their list?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you're asking a strategic question, so it is smart to think about what's going on and how do we fit in. But I don't want you to complicate your own kind of sense of importance for the park system. And so I would say step back from trying to make it a fit in a strategic project or initiative that will fit other departments. But what do you think is important as a citizen in Gig Harbor regarding the parks and open space system? You are more than welcome to study the other plans in the comprehensive plan. And it's valued and welcomed when you do. I will say staff needs to do a lot of that for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I know that this is not I think there's no perfect work plan, but I do think it's important to make this initial effort and to realize we can add more work items to go and see if we can get to a point where we're operating with all plans in mind, but I wouldn't expect that to happen within the next 2 weeks. The comprehensive plan and where council adopts capital improvement plans. That's ultimately a really high task that we're a part of, but I think what's really important is that you stood for your values. That's one of the reasons why this exercise to me should always start with values and what you're trying to have as an outcome, regardless of whether or not they're building the sidewalks and the roundabout, and regardless of whether or not, the environmental element gets written and codified that there will be proactive wetland conservation. You can still have that as a goal, whether it becomes something that the city adopts or not. The commission can stand for it.
Okay.
Today, by the way, is National Wetlands Day. I don't know if you knew that.
National Wetlands Day? Right.
I thought you said weapons.
No.
Really? That's a thing.
No, and in fact, I think I may have it. Maybe it's World Wetland Day.
Today?
Yeah. The United Nations declared it. So
There you go.
Really just Groundhog Day, right?
yeah, that too.
And we all knew there was going to be 6 more weeks of winter. I don't know if anyone had that as a question.
Okay, so yeah, come back values and goals with our next meeting. Will, you got a question?
Oh, yeah, no, thank you. That's what I wanted to clarify is that what I'm hearing is that this would be a topic we discuss at the next meeting, and that, yeah, we each come back with kind of some thoughts on goals and how that might better inform the 22 work plan, with the idea that we may make some changes or updates to that moving forward. Okay.
Yeah, well, and the 22 work plan never got adopted, so you don't actually have a work plan right now. You have a draft.
Well, right. Yeah, that we would revise the draft ahead of adoption.
Yes.
Will, was that your first meeting where we started that one?
Probably.
Yeah, I think it may have been. It may have been.
Or we started it
no.
and just like dropped it midpoint?
Yeah, no, I welcome the exercise. I think it's good. I think it's good to revisit what the commission kind of goals are, what we're tasked with as a commission, and then, align that with kind of what our goals are for the community, what we want to get done.
I think so too. And there's a lot of great information. We heard a lot from the community from the pros plan too. So feel free to dig into the goals and from that.
So we should just basically ignore this and just sort of think about what we would like as a goal, because there seem to be a lot of hefty things on here that I don't know how it makes room for some other stuff.
I think a lot of some of those have been on there for better part of a decade.
And some of them are being worked on or will be. Ansich Home Port, Cushman
There's also
Trail.
other things in there like the Wilkinson Farm visioning and the
That's been there a while, yeah.
Yeah, and so is the Crescent Creek visioning, and so
Yeah, if Ben, if you don't mind me commenting, Georgina, the things on that list is a mixture of things that I would say that when you see something that says public visioning, you know that that falls in the charge duty of the Parks Commission, because you really are at the heart of your job is to be a public forum to discuss what we should be doing with our Parks and Recreation Department assets. And you're able to make recommendations to council. So if you see something on there that says visioning, that is something that I would highlight as really appropriate to be in your work program. Because if it has a public engagement aspect to it, it's something that really you're in charge of hosting as a commission. What I was cautioning a little bit though, is that you just read there's a list of capital projects. And to make capital projects your goal is a little bit of a disconnect in my mind, because like the home port, it's not something that you can advocate for projects and say that they're really important. You do that through your 6-year program already. I think the work program really should be more focused on what is it that you're trying to accomplish. You're not trying to accomplish the project, if I could just kind of straighten that misnomer out. And that's big and bold of me to say that, but I just have seen the conflict where commissions think that they're going to run a capital improvement plan and they can't, and they get really frustrated.
Yeah, I didn't think we would run that.
I know that, Georgina, but if it lists that you're going to do those things and they're going to happen in 2022 and then they don't, well, did you not accomplish your work program? It's not really your work program that didn't get accomplished. It was more of a capital project and funding issue likely.
So Matt, basically what I hear you saying, just as an example. So for example, if my value is historic preservation, I can say, well, my goal for the commission would be to be strong advocates for the creation of historic preservation plans for the structures that are in our park system. Big, broad goal.
Yep.
That leaves it open to the work plan being designed however it needs to be designed to accomplish that goal by the staff.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I understand that.
All right, any other questions on the work plan and what we got tasked with? I think we got one more agenda item. The election of the vice chair. So Mary Barber, the former vice chair, was elected to city, or was appointed to city council between this and our last meeting. And so we have a vice chair vacancy. Our regular elections are in April, where we vote on chair and vice chair after term expirations, and hopefully we'll have a new member by then, where we can fill Mary's spot now in the interim with a vote this evening, or we can just wait until April if you would all prefer. Is there any interest for someone serving in that position for the time being, just as like a backup role until we get till April?
I'm willing to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess,
Was that
is there anybody
Louise?
else? I mean, I don't know how much, experience is necessary for this, probably not a ton. It's definitely kind of, feel free to join in if you like.
Was that Louise that just commented? Because don't you have the seniority? You've been on the commission longest.
Yes, but I agree with Ben that that's not what's required.
I know, but I think you have a very good knowledge of what's at hand. I mean, you would be my vote, so.
Okay, so does the commission want to go ahead and vote on someone this evening, then we'll vote again in April? Is that all right? We'll do that. Okay, let's go ahead and put it to a vote. I would like to nominate Louise Tiemann to be vice chair of the Parks Commission for the remaining
that.
term. Okay, all in favor of voting for Louise for vice chair?
So I get to
Aye.
vote.
Any opposed?
Congratulations.
All right,
Woohoo!
congrats, Louise.
60 days of vice power.
Hey, we've had pretty good luck with the vice chairs around here. I'm just saying. Got a mayor, 2 city council.
Indeed.
Okay, and election of vice chair. All right, parks update report. Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Forgive me for talking as much as I have tonight. I hope that I haven't intruded on your time, and I will try to be brief. My park report to you every month will probably obviously be a little different than the take Jeff took. Jeff really brought you capital projects probably very specifically, and you have a record of those in your packets. So ideally, you are tracking those projects that you're really keen to know. And I certainly am open to any questions on any of them. I won't have the same level of expertise as Jeff, but I can, for example, go over that list and bring out a few highlights. But let me start by saying that what I would probably have more in a monthly report to you are things that I feel that need to be brought to your attention as stewards of our park system. And things maybe that I'm working on that shouldn't be in a vacuum, so to say. And coordination points within the community that have been coming up that I would like you to be aware of and potentially invite your participation if it's a walk around with me at a site meeting, if it's actually attending an open house with me or something. It doesn't even have to be with me, but we can figure out how to cover a community need together. So that's kind of more the focus I would bring to you. What I would say is I want to share to start with that I'm pleased to report that the mayor called a meeting with the board president of Metropolitan Parks District for us to sit together with our city administrator and their executive director present in order to talk about some interest at hand. And one of the spurring on of conversation was that there is an interest out in the community to see whether or not Gig Harbor, the city, should become part of a park district or its own park district. This was on public record in front of the council. It's something, of course, Brenda heard, and she'd be able to talk to you, not so much in this meeting. This is now my report, but because I'm so selfish. No, because I just wanted to bring up that it is a conversation, and it's probably not new to a lot of you because some people have long advocated for maybe not having competing park interests, or maybe having a shared budget or an increased budget because a park district actually has higher taxing abilities and dedicated funds. So it's a conversation that is going on, not with any action of council and no proposal, but I do want you to know that there are discussions about it, including whether or not citizens will petition directly on their own for incorporation of Gig Harbor into the park district. There are options out there, and I don't think, since it's not on our agenda, that we should really discuss it tonight. But I do want to just bring out to you that we are cooperating with Penman staff, because that's our job, is to really look at where are things going and what makes sense to us. And we shared our project list together. And we're able to say that that we want to cooperate and help each other with each other's missions. So no position was taken by the organizations, but this community, including an active citizen, is taking a position. The city council may decide that they're very interested in that kind of park revenue and looking at having a park district of its own, because that is one of the possibilities that could go forward. It may be that we're able just to say that let it play itself out and see what the citizens want. But I attended that meeting, and to follow up, I have colleagues at Penn whom I really appreciate, and I've had some great conversations with them since. My predecessor here, Nicole Jones-Vogel, is there at Penn, and she and I were talking about, well, if both our organizations, including me, the mayor, have said, I want to see cooperative efforts, let's do one. So Nicole and I brainstormed at least one idea that we could start looking at doing together, and it concerns Cushman Trail, and a long-awaited project to do some etiquette signage, right? But we manage Cushman Trail, so do they, Penn. So there are example projects that I think it's important for me to follow up on that are cooperative in nature, given the charge I was given. And I will keep you abreast as details arise, but it may be as simple as putting more emergency beacon notices out on the trails, because those have saved lives already. And Nicole was well aware of that investment the city made and would like to see Penn do it in coordination with us and do some more, because they're not adequate at this time. Another Penman initiative is that there's a study going on of recreational services this year in the whole peninsula, Gig Harbor Peninsula wide. And so I talked to their director of recreation services, Matthew Kearns, and said, what you're studying is important to us too. We need to know where the seniors' needs are and the teen needs are too, and what the market and demand is as well. It's information that I'll definitely want and I'll make a public record, but better if we actually talk about doing this together. So there's a possibility of them including us in their recreation service study, not towards a park district, but towards what are the community needs. And I'll point out as an example, another study they have is a feasibility study that just recently got amended to say they'll study the need for a senior center. Our city has long, well, I don't want to say long, I'm new, but the city here has been aware that a senior center service has been needed, particularly since the Boys and Girls Club closed. So if they're going to study that, I think it's in our interest to have our park system looked at too, like any available lands or opportunities in the largest, in the city on the peninsula, it might be the right place for a senior center. So I'm pleased to tell you that I've taken that charge to cooperate with them, and obviously the school district, which you have on your list too, in Pierce County, and for us to be looking for places that we can cooperate and again, per your mission and your duties, a well-rounded recreation program. Lastly, on that initiative, I attended the Penman open house for the Community Recreation Center, feasibility study now further and into design. And if any of you are interested, I'd be happy to give you the summary I provided to the mayor and to our city administrator. But it was essentially an hour-long open house to see the design that they've come to at this point for their facility. And again, this is probably, without it being on your agenda, time for me to introduce images or even get into the property details. But it's an exciting project just south of the city of Gig Harbor. It is to have an indoor recreation center that could be expanded over the years. And I was asking particularly about that, given there's community discussion about a need for an indoor aquatic center, as you probably know. So those conversations are happening, and I wanted you to know that I'm tracking them, and I feel responsible to share that stuff with you. Another area to report to you, and it came up already tonight, is the city is active in looking at acquisitions for conservation purposes. And I referenced that our main source of funds that we look to is the Pierce County's Conservation Futures Program. Several of you are familiar with that, and if you were keen to see the guidelines and how it works, I'd be happy to meet with you individually and so forth, and or make it a session ahead. But the Conservation Futures application process has me applying to them now for the third time in the last, probably for the city in the last year and a half or two. So we're making a third application. It's because a property has come to the council's attention that could be really important for conservation. So I'm forward to you enough that I need you to know that we're active on conservation. The details of that property, it's an executive session item because it's a potential real estate process. So it's not something I'm able to communicate, but I can tell you that we are actively pursuing conservation. And generally the conservation future efforts that we've been taking on are really around the North Creek area, just north of what is known as Austin Park, Donkey Creek Park, in that vicinity. And you probably know and have some specifics about the sizes in acres, but I did put together for my own sake and be able to share with you individually, like just how ambitious some of the discussions to date have been. And they do add up to over 50 acres of property in that area. I'm not saying that that's what we're applying for. I'm just letting you know that there have been a lot of ambitions for conservation in that area and interest. And so it becomes our job through council to advocate for things that matter and for staff to deliver on applications and so forth. I'm working that. I'm also working with the new Gig Harbor Conservation Fund group to look at their interest and whether or not they would like to help join with trying to acquire those properties of interest. I can pause there and see if you have questions on that. I really don't think I want to take up a lot more of your time. I can go through the project list and tell you the highlights, but I think I've spoken enough that I need to pause.
Any questions for Matthew? specific to any of the topics you discussed or any other on the parks manager update report?
I just want to say I'm supportive of the main programmatic stakeholders, city, Penman, school district, whoever, the Y, really coordinating their efforts on how to provide, because as we've discussed before, the community, the greater Gig Harbor community, all views it as one community, and they don't really care about the fact that that a Penmet parcel is Penmets or the city parcel is the cities. They don't know, they don't care, and it feels like we are one community that we're proud of and happy with, and it has needs, whether you live in Penmet's district or within the city limits or are going to school. So all in favor of that, of those conversations, however they come out at the end of the day, it's worth having and seeing what all the possibilities are. So I'm glad to have these conversations.
I do have a question, because the old Peninsula Gardens property has come up a couple of times. And my understanding is that it's in Penmat Park's purview, not the city's purview. But yet there seems to be a number of proposals coming to the city regarding that, or updates or whatever. So what is the actual nature of that relationship? Or that piece of
Definitely. Thanks for asking. I'll take a stab at that, but others might chime in too. That person, I think, felt like their particular proposal for Peninsula Gardens was of value to all park recreation interests in the area, as a unique facility. And you didn't get the benefit of seeing their images, but they were talking about an indoor greenhouse destination for kind of they call it active recreation, but you could imagine maybe having retreats there or art classes, but a greenhouse space. I think they felt like it was relevant to us and therefore worthy of mentioning, potentially even in our pros plan. It is not our property. And all we could do is say, we're working with Penmet to address wide interest across the peninsula, right? Like, because we know Peninsula residents are coming to Scansey Park and they're coming to our festivals and so forth. And yeah.
I can add to that a little bit too in my Penmet life. So Penmet's had many presentations by the Safe Swim group to increase capacity for swim lessons. That the waiting list at Amanda Beard's clinic is 1,000 kids long, literally. And so Penn Gardens is it's a big space. It's actually bigger than it looks because there's some slopes in there that kind of block where the property edges are. And it's being relatively unused. The youth sail program is storing its boats there for the winter. It's got some deferred maintenance issues, but if those deferred maintenance issues were cleaned up, a little bit, like repairing leaks in the roof and things like that, they could clean it up in the short term to add capacity for adult, I don't know, yoga type things, or for some of their adaptive rec for disabled folks. And then Penmet committed to doing a full feasibility study for an aquatic center, but also for a senior facility at that same location. And then that can all change, right? That's what they are willing to explore at this time. And whether the aquatic center really belongs at the CRT, the rec center over by Cushman Trail is something else again, that's part of the feasibility study.
It's interesting projects and how these connect. Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. And I mean, they're going to impact the whole community. So yeah.
Yeah. And, along those lines, I do have a kind of a thought and a question, I guess. Because Gig Harbor has such a different model. Oh, I'm sorry if I interrupted, Brenda. Do you want to go ahead? Okay. So go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick that, can you hear me okay? I have my earbuds in. Okay. That the Safe Swim group did a presentation at the January 10th City Council meeting They did a really great job. If you're interested in learning more, feel free to just pull that up on the YouTube, and you can get a good sense of their project. I just thought I'd let people know. Thanks.
That was great. It was a good program. Having almost drowned twice when I was a very small child, I'm a big advocate for that. I'm still here because my sister fished me out of the pool. But Gig Harbor has an interesting model in that it purchases historic properties, has nonprofits basically run them and program them in lieu of like recreation programming. And so it's something that I'm kind of curious if the Parks Commission has ever really been involved in supporting the efforts of those nonprofits through grant program or anything like that to encourage, the recreation programming of the park sites around the harbor, because that could be an interesting model that would solve the recreation program aspect with organizations that are already there and committed to what is trying to be done. So I don't know how much consideration has been given to that, if any, but I think some, obviously, because there's some program hours required in various leases and whatnot. So I do think that that could be something that could actually get built up and wouldn't require like a superstructure to provide recreation programming when you have lots of fantastic nonprofits already doing that.
Exactly. I like you said, it's built into some of their leases, but I don't know to what extent that's enforced or is actually done. And
Yeah.
it's even written into the lease. I know it's like an agreement, but yeah, it's something that I think there's an opportunity to expound upon.
It might be something to consider having, a different organization, kind of present at park commission meetings once in a while, just to tell us what they're doing and what the involvement is and how we can help support them. So
Ed and Boat comes through every so often, and they do their presentation, but it's been pre-pandemic before that happened again.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that'd be nice too, actually. Between just the garden club and the Ed and Boat, and Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak, and
Nutshed and
yeah, absolutely. I do have a couple questions for you, Matt. As far as the honoring sculpture, it looks like there was a slight setback there, maybe a couple days. But my question was to the King Tides. Is that where the location's going to be influenced by that?
From what I understand, no, that the artwork is to be installed in Austin Park, not in the estuary itself. And the delay that you may have seen is true. It has to do with getting the construction contract going for the foundation for the artwork, but that is what the city's committing to getting done and bringing to council the construction contract at the end of March. That is not that we're constructing the art. The art's already acquired. It's that it's
pedestal.
securing the pedestal in the correct way and obviously outside of the high water mark.
Right. The ordinary high water mark, not the King
Thank you.
Tide high water mark.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot different in that park.
Yeah. Boy, that's an interesting point you guys can bring up in your own report about us living through those high tides that recently occurred.
Yeah.
I can, Ben, you said you had a couple questions. I
Yeah,
can
the other one
preempt
was the
a
fish
couple
window
things.
for the Ansich, the float going in. Are we still within parameters of getting in before that fish window closes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're asking about the community paddlers dock is what I believe you're talking about. And the work has been active there and it's in your report. I was excited that it included a beach cleanup. And it was really exciting to hear like those guys were there working through the midnight hours because of the tides, cleaning the beach. They came back on Sunday and collected more of the debris that they could. So there was a clean up portion, but really to your question, they did what needed to be done and took the demolished old pier with them, not the entire site mitigation efforts, but that which was related to the community paddlers new pier. They took that material and they're going to return with the new, I want to get my word right. That is not the, I guess that is the float. They're going to come back with the float expected I think it's next week. but their fish window time will be through mid-March, and they're under requirement to be done by mid-March. So we, in fact, will have the project, the Community Paddlers project will be done. I won't say a ribbon cutting is going to occur right then, but certainly by mid-March. And on the Ansich Park site, just to let you know, just some more background things that are going on. There will be notice to the public next week. It'll either be the 7th or the 9th that we are open for applications for boat storage there. And as you might recall, this is human-powered boat storage that people carry into the building. They have to be an authorized renter who happened to win the lottery, because we're anticipating more interest than we have spots. But their application to get a spot, we're going to open that next week, probably the 9th, and it'll be open the whole month of February. And then the staff will go through a lottery process to secure the right number of canoes, paddle boats, and kayaks fitting in on our new rack system. And ideally, we'll have that all up and running so that those people who win that and get a chance to have a rented spot, they will have more than, they could be in May 1st is kind of a hope. They'll have a 6-month rental that officially starts July 1st, but we're excited that we could get them in there earlier, like as early as May 1st. This was all written up and hopefully presented to you previously, that there is a plan for how to do rentals there. There's rates adopted by council. But the exciting part of it is the paddler community float should be in place by mid-March. People will be using it, and the boat storage facility will certainly be active by May 1st.
Matthew, do you have on your agenda that Paddler's Cup is April 22nd and 23rd?
I did not have that written down. Thank you.
That is a big event in the harbor. The Saturday is canoe and kayak paddleboard races, which are super fun to watch. And Sunday is the Oh My God dragon boat races, which are hilarious.
Awesome.
And the community participates, like, and JBLM sends.
I'm going to participate. That's all there is to it. Did you say that April 22nd?
22nd and 23rd. And so if you were thinking about ribbon cutting, that might be a time when you have an awful lot of paddlers and human powered craft in that weekend are all focused on Skansie Park.
Thank you for bringing it up. And not that I'm trying to distract us, but I will also point out that that's sometimes the weekend of your Parks Appreciation Day too. It coincides with Earth Day on the 22nd. So yeah, that's a big weekend for us to start planning around.
Yeah, we've had to compete with the Paddlers Cup, and it is not pretty. The Parks Appreciation Day is kind of low when it falls the same weekend.
I think we would have to avoid Skansie Park and Ansich, for example.
I have one question for you, Matt. Can you give us an update on 1B?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I almost thought to preempt the group to say I did get a question on 1B. And that's what that reference to, of course, is the YMCA joint project with the city to produce the Gig Harbor Sports Complex. 1B is the portion of the property that the city's taking leadership on to develop a multifaceted kind of destination, active recreation, I don't know what to call it, park. You probably have seen, and I hope you have seen, I'd be willing to bring to your next meeting, but a site concept was floated through grant proposals, and it includes things like the active destination playground for the community. So not a neighborhood level, but more of a destination one, ADA accessible. It also includes an event lawn and a shelter and pavilion for performances all around this lawn. Bocce ball and pickleball, those are hot items. I'd like to talk with you all more about things and how that process went, because I understand that there's interest in broader items than what got shown for grant funding, like sand volleyball has come to my attention. But 1B, where it stands right now, is that the city has asked for qualified engineers to come forward and state their ability to design and develop development plans, not build 1B. So we have finalists, and there will soon be a recommendation to council to go with an engineering firm for the design and permitting processes of 1B. They would and likely get underway in the spring. If say it was May, they'd certainly be done and have their ability to have the city apply for permits, potentially for construction, again, permitting towards the fall, maybe end of the year. The city has not committed to a construction start date, and I just wanted to be upfront about that. when you actually do grading of the site. And some people say the clearing of the trees. That is going to be a big moment to anticipate. The design and development process will be what we're contracting to do next, and it will decide the final grading. It'll decide the final buffers around the property, for example, the stormwater flows and all of those kinds of things, and the coordination with the large turf fields to the north, which you probably know as 1A. That's the YMCA portion of the Gig Harbor sports complex. So I don't know if I answered your question well enough, but I just say that we are doing design and development in 2022. Permits may get filed towards the end of the year, but construction is not yet decided when.
Okay, so the trees are not coming down. For some reason, I thought the trees were coming down in March. That's not correct.
Incorrect.
Okay, so when do you anticipate that will begin the process?
So the date of construction, again, is it's not, while not determined, I would anticipate it in the beginning of 2023 on 1B. But one potential is that we'll decide to actually do 1B and 1A together with the YMCA and potentially through one construction contract. I'm not suggesting that's been foretold, but if that were to happen, then we need to wait for the Y to have their funding in place to construct those turf fields. And if they need more time, they have until the end of 2023, I believe, it may even be 24, to have all of their funding in place.
I think it's 23.
Is it 23? I'm looking because I know it's in this report. Construction to be complete no later than 24. So there's a deadline for when they have to be done with construction at the end of 24. I would say that their project needs to get underway certainly by the beginning of 2024. So what I'm telling you is our construction of 1B could be delayed until they're ready, and that could be as late as the beginning of 2024. I don't think, and you can weigh in on this at another time on an agenda item, but I don't think the community wants to wait that long for 1B. So there hopefully will be a blend of meeting this interest and the timing that it either works for the project to do it together, but sooner than the WISE, allowance. They're allowed to wait till 2024.
So the earliest would be
2023 that we'd start on 1B.
at the beginning or?
Yes.
Beginning, okay.
And you said design permitting is what the city's going out for a call on?
Correct.
Would it be worthwhile to go back and revisit it all or touch on as the commission? You said it might be worthwhile putting it on an agenda item at some point just to discuss whether or not we want to, put a recommendation or something forward on starting construction sooner instead of in tandem with the Y.
Yeah.
Would it be
So
worthwhile to add that to the agenda in the future here?
Here's the challenge you face on that. There's a master plan already in place. And in theory, the Park Commission had a chance to help run that public process. So the public's bought into a vision for this project that is enough, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's enough to instruct design development phase. What I'll recommend to you, Ben, is that you ask that the development design come to your commission so that you can see the 30%, we call them, or 60% designs. You'll be able to comment on how that fits the adopted master plan and how it doesn't. And you'll have the latitude of saying, well, the master plan didn't bring up sand volleyball, but we want to because we know we represent the community. And that's something you can do then, even though it's not in the master plan. But what I'm going to caution you from is don't depart from the fact that you have an adopted master plan already. You can't revisit that without a can of worms and stopping design development.
Lots more open houses.
Yeah, I understand that you had a really intense open house about all of this.
My other question, oh, sorry, go ahead, Georgina.
When was that? When
The
was
open
the
houses?
open house?
I think it was, let's see, 2018.
Okay.
That sounds right.
Yeah. I think it was right as Tracy came onto the commission. So probably 4 years ago now.
Yeah, our current mayor talks about that meeting with the trading of monies for how much different elements cost and the intense pressure in the room to work on 1B and 1A and get them done. I'm not saying you should bow to pressure. I'm just letting you know that there is buy-in on a master plan. And if we're going to stand for master plans as a group, we're going to have to stand for master plans.
Particularly for parks, yeah. Speaking of the Y though, okay, so once upon a time, the Y granted city residents 3 free uses of their pool per year. That no longer is a thing. Did COVID kill that?
I read about that, Ben. I didn't know it was not a thing. What indication do you have that it's not possible or?
I went there and asked.
Oh,
The direct personal approach.
yeah, that's not good to hear. I'm sorry to hear that happened to you. Would you like, I'll look into it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going into a long, contract with the Y, and it's like, I'd like them to honor the word.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. On the Y, I don't want it to surprise you. This was probably the last thing I was going to bring up anyways from my report, but the lease agreed upon with the Y is adopted, and it followed a memorandum of understanding that's also adopted. The lease is going through a potential renegotiation because the lease got rather specific, and the lease actually showed a development plan for the turf fields on 1A. That development plan, it was kind of I guess you might call it a compromise of different interest, and they weren't, I wouldn't think there was full satisfaction by almost anybody involved. It's not really my place to tell you the negotiation partners or positions people have taken, but it includes all the sports groups. And there were concerns about the final elevation that's shown in the adopted lease. Just for a point of view, one of the adopted in the lease, not necessarily because it's the best drawing, but it got adopted that the 2 fields they're building will be at different levels, which would put a staircase between 2 fields. That in a park planning perspective, that's not good. Now, there were reasons for having different elevations. I'm not suggesting it was a mistake, but it didn't please stakeholders, for example, who want to rent the entire field and both fields at once and do crossplay. So there was concerns with the adopted design in the lease, and those things are going in front of council this month. They will have a study session, and they will likely have the lease come to them on their meeting of the 28th for potential amendment. That's if the Y and the city agree to a new drawing.
So is there an opt-out potential there at all from the Y, or?
No. I mean, I didn't know how to answer that, because I mean, anybody can break their leases and no longer have one, but that is not a concern here. The Y has well represented themselves with good faith throughout, and they are very dedicated to this project. In fact, it's on my work list to include supporting their application to the federal government for economic development funds. We would be, if council agrees, a co-sponsor on their application. So we are well partnered with them, and the memorandum of understanding backs the lease and the ability to amend the lease. So none of this should be like a sign of concern. It really is trying to get the right design in place before we even get further along with our 1B under design development.
I think I recall from Nicole Jones-Vogel that stepped design had to do with water drainage and things like that on the slope. I mean, it wasn't trying to be fancy. It was a practical matter. So if there's other solutions to the drainage problem, then, or drainage situation, I don't know if it's a problem, but yippee.
Yeah. Thanks, Luis. Yeah, I think you're helping identify like what's the ultimate outcome, the most beneficial product we can offer the community, and ideally not too expensive. And I'll tell you that one of the issues with 2 different elevations was the cost. I mean, it was more expensive for the Y to do that.
Great. Any other questions for Matthew on his Parks Manager report?
I do have a question, and I will say that I don't know about the rest of you, but my laptop's just about to run out of battery. So
We've
if
been
I
on a long
mysteriously disappear, it's not, because I don't love you. I had a question about the comment that Jeff made about stormwater facilities and use, because there's that like outdoor amphitheater area kind of by Sentinel Drive that is just kind of there's a trail that goes below it, but it's sort of stair stepped, and it says it's a stormwater facility. And he mentioned something about stormwater funds being used for parks or park acquisition. And I didn't know if that was on the city's radar or not, because it seems like such a cool space, but it's really never used. I mean, for like any kind of gatherings or anything like that, but it seems like it could be. So I don't know if that's even on the plan or not.
Well, you just brought it to my attention, so thank you. I'll let you know when I learn more.
It's a pretty cool spot. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to hear all of your favorite spots. Again, I'm open to meeting each of you. I hope I've said that, and maybe it'll just be for coffee, but invite me to your favorite park and I'll be there in a flash.
Okay. Great.
We're gonna go ahead and move on to council and commission reports. Councilmember Likens already gave her report. Is there anything else you'd like to add after sitting through and listening? You're good? Okay. Anastasia, you did a really nice write-up on the Arts Commission. Do you want to go ahead and present that or give the highlights from that?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of highlights because yeah, the most important parts of their meeting that concern us, and I think they would appreciate our input, are the Arbor Art, that they would still like to hear from us if we have any possible spots for future carved artworks, just to keep it in our minds, and if we see something in our parks that could be a possible future carved artwork, we could tell them. And also a similar item, they are considering creating a mural project. So they are considering to create artworks, murals, or 3D installation statues that could become touristic destinations. These artworks could tell stories of for Gig Harbor, utilize and highlight spaces across the city, be identifiable as Gig Harbor related and promoting of the history, culture, and values of the city, or just be also all fun aspects of living here. I would just be whimsical and fun. The point of this project is they want the artworks to be interactive and Instagram and in general social media friendly. So people will want to take photos of themselves in front of the artworks and post them on social media, and in this way promote our city. The artworks could be permanent or seasonal and removable, for example, on a canvas that comes out only when needed, or on a wall that stays year-round depending on the theme. And it can be of a large scale or a small scale. Yeah, and they ask our input if we can think of something, of a possible canvas, of a possible point around the city, or even a possible theme that they could develop. And these are the two main points that they could use our feedback, our input.
Great. So you said the murals is something they're looking into. Is there any specific location they're looking into those? Do you know?
No.
Just within city limits, and
yes,
and then on city existing property, I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a new piece of art somebody had made out of or wrapped one of the I forget what they're called, utility boxes out there near Artendale. Have you all seen that? That one's pretty cool. I like that one with the fishing boat on it and stuff like that. If you haven't seen it, I think it's on social media, or you can just drive out there. And then you said the other one was the Arbor Art is what they're still working on as well.
Mhm.
And they're looking for locations and snags for that.
Yes.
And they're open to any location, or they want to keep it specific to any certain location?
I think that they are looking for any location within our park system.
And then you
I
also
think
shared
that-
with them the Will's recommendation of the signage to let people know that it's actually there. Yeah. Thank you
Exactly.
for that.
Yeah, and it was actually Lynn that brought it up, Lynn Stevenson. And they will discuss about it. They will consider this idea. They thought that it was good.
Really nice job on that. I mean, I looked at and you did a really good job on that. Thank you for doing that and attending
Thank you.
that. I
That's very
am
kind.
sad to hear that you will be resigning though from the Parks Commission.
Yes.
Anastasia just let me know she's resigning. She took a new position, a new job, and so will this be your last meeting?
Yes, yes, unfortunately.
Sorry to hear
Yes.
that, but hopefully good things are in store for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for your contributions. Do appreciate it.
Oh,
So
thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm really grateful.
hope you enjoyed your
So
time
much
on
to
it.
have citizen volunteers. Thank you so much, Anastasia.
Thank you.
And if you know anybody who needs some something to do on Wednesday nights,
Yes, yes.
we'd be happy to have them. Okay, so thank you so much, Anastasia. I do appreciate that for attending their meeting. So if anybody has anything in mind they want to reach out to the Arts Commission about, Lynn should be attending one of our future meetings. So keep that in mind, and you can relay messages or to her, contact her personally. But yeah, that's it. Public comment, onto the public comment portion of the agenda. I know Marlene has said she was holding out for that. I don't know if she's still around or not.
Hello, I am still around. I've been cleaning through my junk mail while listening to you. So I was happy to hear you talk about a little bit about Cushman Trail and one of my favorite parks, and the active transportation plan. And I just wanted to extend an invitation to you. Some of you know that I sometimes ride a bike and I lead group bike rides. And one of the things I did with when we got a new parks manager last time is that I invited her to join me on a bike ride. Oh, can I be a panelist? Sure.
Lose her?
We lost her, or muted her.
No, she's coming in as a,
Marlene, throw us your address too.
Unmute. Okay, there I am. Yeah, if I could get into the chat, I would send. Well, you know what? I'll email y'all. So I know you can't all come on a ride because that would make it an open public meeting, but you probably all have different schedules and different paces anyway. So just reach out to me, and it would be a way for you guys to do outreach and meet the public in real life, because we can have a bike ride outside together and you can see some people. And February is a good time of year to do just easy rides. So one of the ones that I do is just Cushman Trail, and we could meet at City Hall or we could meet at the Park and Ride, and we just do Cushman Trail as 2 out and backs. And while we're on there, we can talk about any safety issues. We could talk about the rules that you want to put on the trail and things that we wish all users knew and abided by. It's nice to sometimes plan a social time after that. So Kimball Coffee House is a good one to go to after. So I guess I will send Matthew. Well, Ben probably already has my contact information, but I'll send Matthew all my contact information and you could just send it out there. The best time to do this would be on a weekend. Probably, and these are open to the public. It's a Cascade free group ride. I'm certified to lead with them. They're free to everybody, just people do need to register and sign a waiver. So I'll send you information about that. And it's nice to see you all. and listen to you do your work.
You mind doing your address for public record?
Sure, sorry, it's 7010 Stanage Avenue. I'm right around the corner from City Hall.
I see you walking many days and I smile every time I pass you.
Yes, I am. I haven't been doing much running, but I have been walking. Anyway, it's nice to see you all, and I hope you will take me up on it. And just I'll let you, probably email's the easiest thing, and we'll just go back and forth and work out a date and a pace and expectations. And again, it'll be open to everybody, so a chance for people to meet you all in real life.
Great. Thanks so much for your comments today, Marlene. Matthew, did you have a question for her?
Sorry.
You would if you were unmuted.
I wanted to show great enthusiasm and to please be invited out on each of those bike rides. I can't wait to be on bike in Gig Harbor again. Not about me, but I am a cyclist and a swimmer, and I'm going to help us with triathlons or something. I don't know what, but thank you for that. And what I most importantly wanted to tell you was that Penn did make me aware of a bike bash event that they're going to be hosting in, I believe, May. So I'll make sure to get that out to you commissioners, and Marlene might particular interest. Maybe she knows all about it, but it sounds like a local event where there will be bike corrals, which is where you can buy bikes, you can get bikes serviced. It's a big bike bash, and it's coming to our area.
So thank you for unmuting me. I'm actually one of the organizers on that. So I can tell you more as it's developing, and we're partnering with Rotary and Kiwanis in addition to Penn Parks. We are at the phase of looking for sponsors, because the more sponsors we have, the better it will be. And we definitely want to invite everybody, the commissions, the staff, to come and participate at. We've got confirmation that on the Friday night before the event, we're having a fairly serious classroom session of bike safety for adults. But during the Saturday event, there's going to be a lot of fun stuff for kids and families too. There's going to be a bike rodeo. There's going to be a traffic garden. There's going to be free group rides. So and there will be vendors and hopefully food trucks and music and presentations, and you will hear all about it. So very exciting.
Marlene, did you know the right weekend? The right weekend? I didn't.
Yeah, it's May 21st.
Great. Thanks so much, Marlene, for that information. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would anybody else from the participants like to provide any comment for the commission? Greg or Lexi, you're more than welcome to provide any comment at this point. Yeah, if you want to provide any comment or say anything, just feel free to unmute and provide your name and address. I don't think they're taking me up on it. All right. Well, thank you for attending anyways. Do appreciate the audience, and feel free to provide written comment if you'd like to us in the future, or come back and provide it in live feed. We're going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting if you're all through. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.